This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by lynda.com, the unparalleled online video training library. For a free 10-day unlimited trial, visit lynda.com/MacVoices. And by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPad and iPhone, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPad and iPhone, TextExpander, TextExpander Touch, and Disk Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Welcome back to MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's been at least a couple weeks now since we talked to Joe Kissell about anything, and so that means we're way overdue, because usually we do every other day, Joe, but now a few weeks went by, so that means you must have written 25 or 30 more books.
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Seriously, this time we're here to talk about the new edition of Take Control of Automating Your Mac. This is the version 1.1 edition, I believe. And I think that when we talked about the 1.0 version of this book, the point kind of was that there are a lot of things that you can mean by automating your Mac that most people don't really appreciate and think of as automating their Mac.
Right on. That's one of the things I really try to do in the book is try to de-geekify it, if you will. Is that a word? It is now.
It is now.
And I mean, this is part of what we've talked other times about. This is sort of part of my mission in life is to say, now look, you really don't have to wear a propeller beanie. You don't have to wear a pocket protector. You don't have to love all this high-tech gadgetry. If you do, that's great. But ordinary mortals who have no computer science degrees and who aren't just into all the tech can still do really neat, powerful things that basically the whole point is saving you time and effort. I mean, that's what technology ought to be about in total, is making your life better by saving you time and effort. That's the point. And so in this book, we're talking about Mac automation. I made a point of saying, yes, there are things like AppleScript and shell scripts and macros and all those sorts of things that are sort of, that's what people normally think of when they think of automation. Well, I have to do some programming. I have to do something complex. But, and sure, that's valid. You can do that, and those are very useful things. But there are also much simpler ways of automating your Mac. So I use a very broad definition of automation just to include anything that would count as a shortcut. Is it something that you can do differently that would save you time and effort, like learning keyboard shortcuts or assigning new keyboard shortcuts, or using a launcher utility that will open something in a couple of keystrokes instead of 6 clicks, or whatever it may be. Might be just learning how to use Spotlight better, learning how to use the stuff that's built into your Mac, not even like buying new apps. But anything that you can do that will involve fewer steps getting from where you are to where you need to be, or enable you to get through those steps faster or with less aggravation, counts as automation for me. And so I tried to cover the whole gamut from just learn about how to use the stuff that's already there, turned on, running on your Mac, on everybody's Mac, to, all right, now let's do some slightly more advanced stuff. You don't have to become a programmer, but man, if you could use drag and drop to create a couple of little automator workflows or Keyboard Maestro macros or whatever, look at the kinds of things you can do.
Let's start with launchers. For a couple reasons. First of all, well, the big reason, you just had an article on Macworld, and I'll spoil everybody by saying that Joe's conclusion was that there are no bad choices out there, which I think that's a great place to start, because that means that no matter which one you choose, which option you go for, you're going to have a pretty good experience. Talk about launchers.
Yeah, well, the most interesting thing to me about launchers is actually that Spotlight is now a pretty decent launcher. In Yosemite, even if you don't have a third-party app, and there are a number of them, we'll talk about them, they're really good, but even if you're just using what comes out of the box, just using Spotlight, it's actually a pretty decent launcher. It wasn't a kind of okay launcher before, but now it can really compete with some of these third-party tools. You type whatever your preferred keyboard shortcut is. Usually it's Command spacebar, or you could make it Control spacebar or whatever. The window comes up, you start typing, and then if the thing that it finds is the name of an app, you don't even have to type the entire name. You just press return and it opens. And Spotlight can also do things like doing calculations. It has a calculator built right into the Spotlight window, and maps, and searching for documents on your Mac. That's kind of a big thing that Spotlight does. But it has all these other features: Wikipedia, movie times, all these things built right in. These are things that previously you had to use a third-party launcher for. So I think that's marvelous, because this is going to get more and more people into the habit of saying, okay, I want to launch this app. I don't remember exactly how it's spelled. I don't even remember which folder it's in. I don't want to have to go clicking through all these folders in my hard drive, looking for an icon or figure out which of these 1,000 things in my dock it is. I just want to say, I remember it started with T. And so you bring up Spotlight, you start typing T, and then there's, oh yeah, that's the one. I recognize that icon, and you press return, and it opens, and you're done. So that was one of the really most surprising things to me in Yosemite, was that Spotlight it sucks a lot less now. It's actually pretty good. Of course, for all that, there are still a lot of things that Spotlight doesn't do that other utilities do, or that other utilities just do better. So in my Macworld article, as well as in this book, I talk about Launchbar and Butler and Alfred and Quicksilver. These are the four best known sort of keyboard-based launchers. There are others that use the mouse, that pop up contextual menus, or that put palettes of icons on your screen, those sorts of things. But in terms of the keyboard-based launchers, those are kind of the big four. And either with built-in actions or with third-party plugins or extensions or things you can add on to these tools can do just incredible things. So I love the way Launchbar lets me select a document and open Launchbar and say, okay, now I want you to open this with some other app than the one that it was created with. Don't just open it, no, but let me open it in something else. That's really handy. Or I can send data from one place to another place. I love that Launchbar keeps a clipboard history. I love that it will let me, I can just type the name of an iTunes track, and it will start playing that song for me. And of course it does the calculations, and it can do, there's just such a huge long list of things that Launchbar can do. But Butler and Alfred and Quicksilver can also do most of these things. And each of them have their own specialties, things they do well, things they don't do as well, idiosyncrasies to their user interface. And I know people out there that are just huge Butler fans. And they just think Butler is the bee's knees, and it's fantastic, and it's designed the way they think. And I'm not one of those people. I don't have anything against Butler conceptually. It's just that when I've tried it, I found that it doesn't work the way I think. And that's probably partly because I've been using Launchbar for 13 years. But it's very powerful if you happen to think the way it works. And the same thing is true of Alfred. The same thing is true of Quicksilver. They have their pros and cons, and they're all good at certain things. And my best advice is, try them. Say, okay, I'm just going to use Quicksilver for a day or a week or however long it takes, and I'm going to really get into the habit and see what things it does differently and see if I like this mode. And then you decide it is or it isn't for you, then try the next one. But try something. Even if you just use Spotlight, get into the habit of doing stuff on the keyboard, because it's so much less annoying than having to search through folders all the time and search through iTunes and search through all your different apps. Having to bring up Calculator when you want to do a simple calculation. Doing all this stuff in line is just incredibly time-saving.
And again, it's easy. And that I think is the most important thing. Like you say with Spotlight, it's learn setting and or learning the key combination. And in fact, my hands know it, but I can't think of what it is. It's command space? Is that right?
Yeah. So Spotlight by default is command space. So before Spotlight used command spacebar, LaunchBar did. And so when Spotlight started using that, I switched Spotlight to be control spacebar, just because I do this action, a million times a day. Left thumb on command, right thumb on spacebar, and I want it to do what strikes me as the right thing because of, again, my particular proclivities and my way of thinking and what I'm used to. If you want to click a button with your mouse instead, that's fine. If you want to use some other keystroke that's interesting to you, that's great too. I'm not being prescriptive about exactly how you use it. I'm just saying, really good idea to give it a try.
I know we talked about TextExpander last time. That's another one of my favorite ones because it's so quick and so easy to use TextExpander at its most basic level and still get a huge return on the effort.
Oh yeah. And TextExpander, well, all of these utilities, but since you mentioned TextExpander, if you've been using them for years, and I have been using TextExpander as well for years, you may have missed some of the interesting new features that have been added on over time. For example, okay, there was a place on the TextExpander blog that I linked to in my book where they explain how to do currency conversion with TextExpander. So you can actually type, like some character, 85 euros, and you press the space bar, it just expands into whatever that is in dollars. Way cool, super, super cool. And in fact, you can do currency conversions in most of these launchers as well. So if you've been using these apps for a while and you haven't paid attention to the new features that have been added recently, it's worth looking at because they can often do some really crazy things, and there's so much overlap. So there is overlap between the capabilities of LaunchBar and TextExpander, for example. One of the other, like my book on automating talks about shell scripts just a little bit. Have another book on the command line, which actually second edition is in the works, and that will be coming out soon. It's expanded by like 50 pages, and I've got tons of new material. We'll talk about that another day. But anyway, one of the things I noticed is, well, of course you can integrate shell scripts into TextExpander and into Keyboard Maestro and into LaunchBar. They're like, they don't have to be like these standalone things where you open the terminal application and you type some magic code. No, you can stick that, if you have some, you find on the web, hey, there's this code that does something that's useful to me, but I don't really want to mess around in terminal. Well, that's okay. Just grab the code and stick it in, one of these other containers that you are accustomed to using, and then, hey, it works. So really fantastic.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by lynda.com, the unparalleled online video training library. Everyone likes to try before they buy. That way you can be sure you know you're getting what you pay for, that it suits your needs, that it delivers on the promises, that it delivers for you. That's why I'm so excited to point out that you can get a free 10-day free trial of lynda.com at lynda.com/MacVoices so you can answer all those questions for yourself. Find out why millions of people all over the world are using lynda.com to start learning about things like business, communication, and design. To improve their skills with programs like Logic, Adobe Lightroom, and WordPress. To demystify Facebook. To understand Instagram. To improve their presentations. See, that's the point. lynda.com has an amazing span of topics to choose from, so you can use it for work or for pleasure, for home or for office, for professional education, or your favorite hobby. And these videos aren't just put together by anybody. Each lynda.com author is an expert in their field, sharing their knowledge with you, just like you were attending one of their classes in person. You can get access to the entire lynda.com library free for a full 10 days. No restrictions, no limitations. Watch as much as you want for 10 days. Watch any topic, any subject, any software tutorial you want for 10 days. You pick what you want to learn about, and then go get it at lynda.com/MacVoices. I'm always looking for an interesting new video to sample, so let me know what you're watching by emailing me at chuck@macvoices.com. Maybe I've seen it, maybe I haven't. It's time for you to invest in yourself, and you can start that investment today for free at lynda.com/macvoices. Do it right after the show, or open a new window in your browser and do it now. But by all means, do it. lynda.com/macvoices for a free 10-day full trial. Thanks to lynda.com for their support of Mac Voices. Joe, sometimes when we do these discussions, I'm afraid that we go to the very bottom level because we're trying to encourage people not to be afraid of this stuff, to try it. So let's up the bar just a little bit for part of the discussion. What are some of the more advanced kind of automation things that you cover in the book, rather than just the launchers and the text expanders and all?
Right. So I did this thought experiment. I have, I talk about all these different apps and tools and approaches to automation in the book, and I thought to myself, well, if I were stranded on a desert island with somehow like my Mac and power and one automation utility, I don't know how that would work, but if I were, what would that one automation utility be? And I decided that one utility would be Keyboard Maestro. So Keyboard Maestro is a macro utility, which basically means you give it a list of things to do in order, and it does those things with a single action. So you click a button, or you press a keystroke, or you choose a menu command, or you do whatever. You trigger it somehow. You get to choose how, and then it does the list of things you told it to do. Keyboard Maestro also includes a launcher. It's not the greatest launcher. It's an okay-ish launcher, but if I had to choose just one, it's a multi-purpose tool. Also includes a clipboard history. Not the best clipboard manager I've ever seen, but it's really pretty good, and so it's fine. And the list kind of goes on. It includes all these other things. It has a little bit of a learning curve. It's not a huge learning curve. A little bit of learning curve. You have to get sort of the basic idea of how it's laid out and how you construct macros. But it's kind of a lot like Automator in the sense that you're not like sitting there typing code. It's drag and drop. You say, well, first thing I want to do is let's look at this list. Oh yes, I want it to do that thing. So you click on that and drag that over. Okay, great. And then the next thing I want to do is, let's see. Oh yeah, there's the other thing I want to do next. And you drag that over. You say, oh, it's going to do this and it's going to do this. And there are a lot of things that require tweaks. Like if the first thing you want to do is choose a menu command, well, you got to tell it which one. So you fill in the little blanks or choose from menus or whatever. But basically, it's drag and drop, and you try it out and you say, oh, something didn't quite work the way I was expecting it to. Maybe whatever, a dialogue came up and I needed to click the OK button. So you put another step in, okay, and at this point, click OK, and it can do vastly more complicated things. I have some Keyboard Maestro macros that are just, a mile long. They have all this logic in them. Well, first check to see if this is the case. And if this, if case A, then do this. And if case B, then do this. And if case C, then do this. And then, grab some information out of here and then process it through this Apple script and then do something else and process it through this shell script. And so you can get fabulously complex if you want to, if you need to, if you have the time and energy and interest, if you want to figure this stuff out. It can do enormously powerful things, but the barrier to entry is pretty low. You pay the whatever $36 or something that it costs, and you can download some free sample actions to get you started. And Keyboard Maestro macro could be as simple as, well, open an app or send an email message to somebody, or a single action that you simply assign an easier shortcut to. Or it can be like, every time I open Safari, I also open Mail. So why don't I just have one action that opens both of them together, or whatever it is that you happen to do. So of the things I talk about in the book, Keyboard Maestro is not the geekiest, and it's not the most complicated, but it's probably the most powerful. I mean, if you want geeky, talk about Visual Basic for applications in Microsoft Office. So,
yeah, that's pretty geeky.
Yeah, I mean, so Excel and Word have a programming language built in, and it's cross-platform, and you can do incredibly sophisticated stuff in this programming language. You have to live within the Microsoft world, and it's a kind of idiosyncratic language, and the editor is weird, and there's lots of things about it that are kind of like, but if you need to do heavy-duty automation with Microsoft Office apps, it's an enormously powerful programming language. It's not as, I mean, it's a program. It's a programming language as opposed to a scripting language, but it's not as complicated as learning, C or one of its variants. It's not as complicated as, probably not as complicated as learning Java, but it has this great feature where you can say, okay, look, I need a macro in Microsoft Word, but I don't know Visual Basic. That's okay. You click the record button. You do stuff. And then you click stop. And then it makes a macro for you. It just has the list of all the things you did while recording was on. Then you can say, oh, well, that's the command to do that. So I can see right here in this line, oh, that was when I resized that window. Okay, but I don't want the window to be quite so narrow, so I'm going to change this number here, which must be its width. It's that kind of thing. So you record yourself doing actions, and then you go back and you can usually, without a whole lot of difficulty, tease out what it was doing and then make little adjustments as needed.
Yeah, that's pretty geeky. I guess the point here sort of is, you've taken us from the low level to the high level, that this is all, it can save you so much time. It can save you a lot of effort, especially if you do repetitive things. The concern I have with investing too much time in doing any of the automation is my next software upgrade, either third-party or system software, will break it. And then I've got to troubleshoot it. And I know what happens. I will then go back to doing it by hand the old way and say, boy, it was nice when I had it, but I don't have it anymore. And I'm busy. I got too much stuff to do.
I won't kid you, that happens. A particular point of pain for me was Quick Keys. So back in the day, Quick Keys was my favorite Mac utility. It's a macro utility, very much along the same lines as Keyboard Maestro. But Quick Keys did some really unique things. I mean, Quick Keys goes back to the Mac OS 9 and like the classic days. It's been around forever and ever. And it was upgraded for Mac OS 10, and I used it. I liked it. At one time, I liked it a lot better than Keyboard Maestro. But then development stopped. Actually, one of the main developer died, and the company that owned it was unsuccessful in continuing the development, and so it still exists. You can still buy it, and it's kind of mostly works with Yosemite, with some asterisks and exceptions, but it hasn't been updated in any meaningful way in years, and if I had to guess, I would say it probably won't be. And I don't feel comfortable using software that doesn't appear to have a future, if I have any choice. So there are certainly things that break, whether it's third-party software like that, or whether Apple has just moved things around or renamed things or what have you. But I guess my feeling is, if it was worth automating in the first place, like if it saved you enough time to make it worth your while, it's probably worth another however much time to modify the thing so that it works under the new system. I have to say, I have all kinds of automation stuff going on my Mac, and I've upgraded many times. Upgraded my apps, upgraded OS 10, and other than Quick Keys, the list of things that have broken has been pretty small, and usually when things break, it's a matter of you have to fix something very minor. Like there's a lot of automation apps rely on there's a sort of layer in OS 10 that lets apps sort of see controls on your screen, like see what buttons and fields and sliders and things are there and manipulate them. And this feature had a certain name and it was a certain location. In Mavericks and earlier, you'd go into this system preferences pane and check a box, and then Apple moved it to a different pane and gave it a different name, and so that was irritating, but whatever. You go into the new place and check the new box, and then you're done. There's a flip side to this, which is sometimes upgrades give you a lot more in terms of automation. So one of the things I do in this new 1.1 version of the book is talk about the things that are different in Yosemite. And one of the things that's different is that just as you could always use AppleScript to automate your Mac, you go into AppleScript Editor. What used to be called AppleScript Editor is now called Script Editor. And it's now called Script Editor because it doesn't just support AppleScript, it also supports JavaScript. So if you want to do the sorts of things that you can do with AppleScript, but you don't know AppleScript, you don't want to learn AppleScript, you do, however, know JavaScript, no problem. You can put all of your JavaScript knowledge to use, and it would be an exaggeration to say you can do everything in JavaScript that you can do in AppleScript, but you could do most of the things, and you just express the thing in the JavaScript way instead of in the AppleScript way, and so it's a super great capability for people who know JavaScript and want to do the sorts of things that would have required AppleScript in the past.
Today's edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPad and iPhone, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPad and iPhone, TextExpander, TextExpander Touch, and Disk Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. If you work with PDF documents for business or just for yourself, then you need PDF Pen from Smile. PDF Pen gives you the power to edit and annotate your PDFs, run optical character recognition on them to turn them into editable text, and even export them to Microsoft Word. With the Pro version, you can export to Excel and PowerPoint, and that means you can also export to Apple's Pages, Numbers, and Keynote too. Smile just released yet another great update to PDF Pen, bringing it to version 7.1. Now you have new ways to control page numbering, including control over font, color, formatting, and page range. You also have new stamps to choose from, like paid, faxed, copied, and more. You can even create custom stamps that contain your name and the date the document was stamped. PDF Pen 7.1 also brings auto deskewing when performing optical character recognition, and that's a great thing because it improves the quality of the resulting scan, making it even more useful when you annotate it. And there's improved voiceover support in PDF forms as well as other fixes and improvements. All that on top of interactive PDF forms, integration with iCloud Drive, and a whole lot more. Want to learn how to use all these great features? Michael E. Cohen wrote the book on PDF Pen, literally. In Take Control of PDF Pen 7, you can learn all about the great new features and how to put them to work for you. You can find PDF Pen 7 and PDF Pen Pro 7 on the Mac App Store, or you can download demo versions and buy direct from Smile at smilesoftware.com. Find out just how much you can get done with your PDFs with PDF Pen from Smile. Smile, the makers of world-class software. Thanks to Smile for their ongoing support of MacVoices. I hate to keep saying what else is new in this book, but what changed to the point that you wanted to do a full point dot point upgrade. Dot point upgrade? Is that right? No.
I don't know
anyway.
What they're called. But anyway, yeah. A few things. So one of the things was what used to be called speakable items. So I have to tell you a story. Back in like 1994 or something, thereabouts, 95, I don't know, somewhere in the, it must have been about 93, 94. Apple released the Quadra AV,
I had one of those.
Yeah. Well, it was a great Mac, and this was the first Mac that had speech recognition. It came with a separate chip or board, I don't know, that was a signal processing circuitry that was dedicated to speech recognition. It came with this little oddly shaped mic that sat on top of your monitor, and the company where I was working got one of these, and the IT guy asked me to come in just to like try it out before it actually got sent to the person who it was for. And I had read about this, of course. I knew how it was supposed to work. So we like had a Microsoft Word document open, and I'm just like, computer, select all. And it selected all. Computer, text to table. And it converted it to a table. And I like just started giving it commands, and they all worked. And I'm like, oh, I'm living in the future. This is awesome. If this is what we have in 1994, imagine what we'll have in like 2014. Okay, well, it turned out that what we had in 2014 was not very much better. It was kind of the same thing. You could speak a list of, a fairly limited list of commands to your Mac, and it would do those things. It often got it wrong, got the interpretation of what you said wrong. You could add your own commands after a fashion. But even though Apple added dictation a couple of OSs ago, the actual controlling your Mac with your voice didn't change that much until Yosemite. And Yosemite replaced speakable items, which is basically the list of commands you could speak, with something called dictation commands. Dictation commands, it's not the same list. It's a different list. But like speakable items, it's an expandable list. You can use Automator to make your own things, like when I say this, do this. And it turns out to be both more accurate, more powerful, more extensible, and much less finicky than speakable items were. It's actually practical to use for operating your Mac, and it uses the same interfaces used for dictation. So if you like making your Mac type what you talk using the dictation feature, it's exactly the same thing. It's no longer two separate interfaces. You enable dictation, you start talking, words start appearing on the screen, and while you're in that mode, you can give your Mac commands to, select menu commands or click buttons, or any of the things on this list, which can include your own stuff that you add. So that's really cool. And we're still not living, it's still not Starship Enterprise. Okay, it's not Siri even, but it's way better than it was. And I'm just delighted that it feels like I've been waiting 20 years for Apple to make any serious strides. I mean, I'm exaggerating. Of course, there have been changes, there have been improvements, but this feels like kind of the biggest improvement to voice control that has happened in a long time, and I'm just really tickled to see it there.
I'm so glad you brought it up. I have to admit that I'm a little biased. I'm afraid I forget that the Mac OS Yosemite has actual automation things built in. We talked about Spotlight, but that sort of went right by me because it's just, well, that's just Spotlight. But yeah, there are some automation features, and I did not know about the fact that I could modify the dictation commands. So I got to go and experiment and have a little fun.
It's a little bit weird in that in order to use the dictation commands, you first have to download this enhanced speech recognition thing, which is like over a gigabyte, and that kind of unlocks this other capability. And it also gives your Mac the capability of recognizing your speech on the Mac without having to send everything you say to the cloud to be recognized there. So it's way better, but it is a huge download. And once you've done that, you have to kind of it's in an odd place. You have to kind of dig around to find it, but once you have that enabled in the right place in system preferences, you can do some really cool things. So that's one new thing in Yosemite. I talked about Spotlight. I had to I have a section on clipboard managers, and this is another thing that I wrote about for Macworld. Basically, these are apps that keep a record, a history of what you copy and cut to your clipboard. So if you copy something, paste it, and then copy something else, normally the second thing overwrites the first thing, and you can no longer get back to what was previously on your clipboard. Clipboard managers keep a history, maybe 100 things, 1,000 things, more than that. So I can, like, just as a trivial example, I could go to a web page and copy the title of an article and copy the URL, then switch someplace else and paste the one and then paste the other. So it's copy, copy, paste, paste instead of copy, switch, paste, switch, copy, switch, paste. You know, so that's cool. And also, if I copy something and I later, you know, I forget and I want to go back and see something I copied earlier, I can do that. So there are lots of tools that do this. Talk about this in the article, talk about it in the book. Used to be that my favorite clipboard manager was something called PTH Pasteboard. And I could go on and on about how great it was and all the things it did. Unfortunately, it's incompatible with Yosemite and no longer being sold. And the developer is being a little bit mysterious, but it looks like it's basically dead. It looks like it probably will not be made to work in the future, and I'm really sad about that because one of the cool things it could do was to synchronize my clipboard history across Macs. So if I copy 3 things on this Mac and I go over to this Mac over here, I still get access to those last 3 things that I copy automatically. That was neat. There's nothing else that does that quite that way that I've found anyway. But that aside, that was something I had to say goodbye to in the book. iCloud Drive. One of the things I talk about in the book is automating syncing of files between Macs, and there are lots of ways to do that. You might use an app like ChronoSync or BitTorrent Sync or one of these kinds of things. That's, you know, look at this folder and make sure that this folder on this Mac has the exact same contents as this folder on this Mac, and just keep them up to date. So that's great. You can use Dropbox or, you know, one of those similar services that do the syncing via the cloud. Or you can now use iCloud Drive. So if, you know, again, it's just for things that will be in that folder, but it's built in. You don't need any extra software for it. So that's neat. Oh, and then, okay, so, right. So I thought I was being so clever. When I wrote the first version of the book, I needed some examples of things you can do with Keyboard Maestro, some examples of things you can do with a shell script. I'm like, okay, something that I know is going to be really painful for a lot of people, that everybody's going to be so irritated. They're going to be excited to see that now I have an automated way to do this. So the thing I decided to use as one of my examples was batch renaming files. So let's say I have a folder full of pictures, and they're all like img underscore some 4-digit number dot JPEG, and I want them to be like, you know, kid's 3rd birthday party number 1 dot JPEG and kid's 1st birthday party number 2, like that. So I gave these examples of, well, here, unfortunately, after all these years, I mean, you can do this in Windows. You could do this in Windows 20 years ago, but you can't do it in OS 10. There's no batch rename. Don't worry. Joe's here to the rescue. Here's how, you know, your script for batch renaming. And of course, Apple put that in Yosemite. So, so Apple broke my book by adding a great feature to the Finder in Yosemite. You don't need to do any terminal stuff or whatever to batch rename files. It's just there. It's just right in the Finder. It's fantastic. So thanks, Apple. I mean, belated thanks. So now that you can do this, I had to come up with different examples. So I came up with different examples. But you know, it is nice that Apple is looking out for, you know, trying to make some efforts to automate more things without requiring third-party utilities.
we need to wrap the interview because I want to go and play with some of this stuff. Because you've already taught me some things that I didn't know were there in Yosemite. You've reminded me of a few things, and you encouraged me to go and be a bit more efficient. As we talk, I keep thinking of, hey, I could do that, I could do that, I could do that. So I guess we better ask where I can go get the book and where can everybody else go get the book and all that.
Sure thing. So go to takecontrolbooks.com. It's Take Control of Automating Your Mac. It's $15. Of course, if you bought an earlier version of the book, the upgrade is free. And we offer bundles of multiple books for lower prices. So buy them all.
Buy them all. Joe, it's another great, I say it every time, but it's another great edition. And every time we talk, I get excited about this stuff. And then I go and look in the books and I incorporate something into my own workflow and improve my efficiency. And then I just am in awe of what you do. So
well, thank you.
There you go. I guess we'll talk to you again soon. You hinted a couple things that are coming up, so that'll let people know. And there may be some other things that may show up as well.
We got lots. Great things are afoot.
Good. It's good to see you. Thanks for the time.
Welcome. Thank you.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Go check out Joe's book. Let us know what you're automating or what your reaction is to some of this stuff. I think it's one of those topics that everybody would like to play with and a lot of people are afraid to. Maybe we've dispelled just a little bit of that fear here this time. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the MacVoices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free MacVoices magazine on Flipboard by visiting MacVoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.